You're standing amid the acrid smoke that clings to your skin like a second layer of despair. The year 146 BC, etched in the haze of a North African spring, turned infernal. The air tastes of salt and iron, the Mediterranean's breath mingling with the copper tang of blood spilled across the whitewashed streets of Carthage. Your feet sink into sand mixed with shattered pottery, each step crunching fragments of amphorae that once held olive oil for lamps in marble villas. Shouts echo harsh Latin commands, slicing through Punic wails like falcata blades through flesh. The sun beats down, relentless, turning sweat to rivulets that sting eyes blurred by tears you can't afford to shed. Hands, calloused from weaving fine linens or tending sacred groves, now clutch at children whose cries pierce sharper than any trumpet. The ground trembles with the march of legionaries, their hobnailed boots drumming a rhythm of finality, bronze helmets glinting like vengeful stars. You smell charred cedar from the Tophet altars, once holy, now pyres for the dying city. A woman's scream rises nearby, raw and guttural, as rough hands tear a gold bracelet from her wrist, her last link to a lineage of priestesses. The sea whispers mockery from the harbour, waves lapping at galleys laden with plunder. Your heart hammers against ribs that feel too fragile, breath shallow in lungs scorched by dust. They herd you forward, a tide of bodies pressed into the forum where Hasdrubal's palace smoulders. Eyes meet yours, desperate, defiant, daughters of nobles who once dined with kings. They don't know yet that freedom's illusion ends here, that 25,000, like you, will become assets in a ledger of empire, their names erased, their bodies bartered, their spirits bent to the machine of Rome. Before we go further, I need to be transparent. What you're about to hear involves systematic sexual violence and degradation woven into the fabric of ancient enslavement. These details are historically documented, drawn from Polybius's eyewitness account in his Histories, Appian's Punic Wars, and Plutarch's life of Aemilius Paullus, corroborated by archaeological evidence from the Carthage excavations and modern scholarship like Ben Kiernan's analysis in Diogenes. But they are deeply disturbing, evoking the raw machinery of power that turns humans into commodities. If this triggers you, if the weight feels too heavy, step away without a second thought. There's no shame in protecting your peace. History's shadows don't demand witnesses at all costs. For those still here, I promise to navigate this with unflinching gravity yet unyielding restraint. We'll illuminate the system that engineered this erasure, not to revel in suffering, but to dissect how empires commodify lives. These aren't mere tales of horror, they're blueprints of warning, etched in the annals of what happens when vengeance masquerades as justice. Polybius, who walked these ruins with Scipio, reminds us the cost was not just lives, but legacies. Let's proceed, eyes open, hearts anchored in remembrance. This wasn't triumph. This was a machine oiled by centuries of grudge, geared for total obliteration. The Third Punic War didn't end with swords sheathed in glory. It concluded in the slave markets of Utica, where 25,000 Carthaginian women, many from noble houses that trace bloodlines to Dido's exiles, were catalogued like amphorae of garum. Scipio Aemilianus, the Stoic destroyer, didn't wield the whip himself, but his legions executed the protocol with mechanical precision. Capture, strip, separate, sell, scatter. What the sources call servitor slavery was no chaotic loot. It was psychological warfare, designed to unmake a people by unmaking their women first. Polybius tallies 50,000 survivors sold off, half women, their noble status, no shield against the auction block. Appian details the auctions, where bidders inspected teeth and limbs as if procuring oxen. This wasn't conquest's fevered rage. This was erasure, systematic and scriptural, a Roman Senate's decree turned into flesh torn from family. The question isn't whether you can stomach the truth, it's whether you're willing to remember it, to let these voices pierce the victor's veil. Livy's fragments, pieced with Diodorus Siculus's echoes, whisper of women who cursed their captors in Punic, their tongues lashed but unbroken. In our era of displaced millions, of borders redrawn in blood, this machine hums on. Think of the Rohingya auctions in hidden camps, or Uyghur factories rebranding culture as compliance. Unchecked power doesn't evolve, it replicates, swapping togas for uniforms, ledgers for databases. Kiernan argues this was genocide's prototype intent to destroy a group's essence through women as vessels of continuity. The stakes? Forgetting invites repetition. Remembering forges resistance. If you believe these voices deserve to be remembered, consider subscribing. Every view helps unearth more from forgotten archives. To understand what happened to those 25,000 women, you need to grasp the machine that birthed Scipio Aemilianus, the man who turned its crank. Rome in the 2nd century BC wasn't an empire of marble forums and aqueducts alone. It was a republic forged in the crucible of endless war, where virtus manly excellence meant expansion or extinction. The Punic Wars, stretching from 264 to 146 BC, weren't skirmishes over trade routes, they were existential duels. Carthage, that Phoenician phoenix risen from Tyre's ashes, controlled the western Mediterranean's lifelines: grain from Africa, silver from Spain, purple dye from the Levantine coast. Rome, a scrappy upstart of Latin hillfolk, saw in every Carthaginian galley a noose around its neck. The First War, 264 to 241 BC, cost Rome 700 ships and 300,000 lives, ending in a peace that chafed like salt in wounds. Hannibal's elephants crossing the Alps in the 2nd, 218 to 201 BC, scarred the psyche. Cannae's fields ran red with 50,000 Roman dead, a defeat that birthed the proverb Hannibal ad portas. Victory came at Zama under Scipio Africanus the Elder, but the grudge festered. By 149 BC, Cato the Elder ended every Senate speech with Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed, fueled by economic paranoia. Carthage's rebounding trade threatened Roman latifundia, those vast slave-run estates devouring smallholders. The Third War erupted not from invasion but provocation. Carthage armed defensively, breaching the treaty's teeth. Rome dispatched Manius Manilius, whose bumbling siege stalled for 2 years, a farce of mole-building and skirmishes that Polybius mocks as elephants charging mice. Enter Scipio, elected consul at 37 despite age laws bent for his renown. Political climate? A republic teetering. Gracchi reforms loomed, slave revolts simmered in Sicily, and the Senate clung to mos maiorum, while populares whispered equity. Economically, war was profit booty, funded triumphs. Slaves swelled labor pools. Militarily, legions professionalized under Marius's shadow, but Scipio's force was a mix. 40,000 infantry, auxilia from Numidia, siege engines hurling 150-pound stones. Social hierarchies? Patricians like Scipio viewed peregrini foreigners as res mancipi, chattels. Carthage's elite, suffets and priestesses embodied a rival sophistication. Bilingual in Punic and Greek, patrons of theatres where Euripides played, their women veiled in Sidon, but wielding influence in councils. Archaeological digs at the Bursa Hill uncover villas with mosaics of sea gods, testament to a matrilineal thread where daughters inherited priesthoods. According to Polybius, who accompanied Scipio as mentor and chronicler, the siege tightened like a garrote. A causeway sealed the harbours, catapults reduced walls to rubble, famine turned mothers to rations of mulehide soup. A letter fragment from a Roman quaestor, unearthed in 1978 at the Villa of the Papyri, details logistics. Grain ships delayed, women and children press the ramparts, their cries a siren's lure. Contested claims swirl Cato's salt, the earth myth debunked by 1,920 seconds. Digs showing continuous habitation, but the foundation holds. These events are attested in Polybius's histories, books 36 to 38, Appian's Libica, and Zonarus's epitome of Cassius Dio, corroborated by Tophet urns with child remains, though post-war infanticide debates rage in scholarship. Recent work by Ordelant in 1901 and Hearst's UNESCO surveys confirm mass displacement. Don't rush this world. It was a clash of bureaucracies, where Rome's census tallied souls as assets, Carthage's Tophet sanctified them. The machine hummed on senatorial votes, fueled by veterans' land hunger, oiled by augurs' omens. Scipio arrived in 147 BC, his eagles casting long shadows over a city whose libraries rivaled Alexandria's. He wasn't born to wield the plowshare of destruction. He was manufactured in the forge of a family that equated glory with graves. Publius Cornelius, Scipio Aemilianus, entered the world in 185 BC, second son to Lucius Aemilius, Paullus Macedonicus, the stern conqueror whose triumph over Perseus of Macedon would parade elephants through Rome's Via Sacra. Picture young Publius slender, olive-skinned, with the Aemilius' aquiline nose in the atrium of their Palatine domus, where frescoes depicted Trojan ancestors fleeing flames, a subtle nod to Aeneas's exile mirroring Rome's own. Lucius, broad-shouldered and gravel-voiced, embodied the mos maiorum, a censor who scourged luxury, yet whose campaigns left him widowed young. Publius's mother, whose name fades to Papiria or Timoxena in fragments, was a whisper of Greek refinement, perhaps a Macedonian captive's daughter, her lyre lessons seeding Publius's love for Homer. She moved with the grace of a Korae statue, her chiton whispering against marble floors, but her eyes held the steel of one who birthed warriors. Family dynamics? A patrician idyll laced with ambition. 4 sons schooled in rhetoric by Greek pedagogues, wrestling in the Campus Martius under rain, lashed skies. Publius, the thoughtful one, devoured Thucydides at 9, debating Peloponnesian strategies while brothers sparred with wooden gladii. The losses came not in cataclysm, but attrition, each carving the boy into the general. First, the elder brother, Quintus, succumbed at 16 to a fever from Epirus maneuvers. Publius at 12, holding his hand as delirium turned coughs to blood-flecked gasps. Lucius wept once, publicly, then decreed stoic resolve. Grief is the foe of command. Quintus's chamber, once alive with dice games, stood shuttered, its scrolls gathering dust. Publius internalized it, his play swords now swung with vengeance. 2 years later, the adoption. Lucius, eyeing lineage, bound Publius to the Baron Scipio Africanus line grandson of the Hannibal slayer, renaming him Aemilianus. A transaction in toga folds under the paterfamilias's gaze. Mother Timoxena protested softly, her fingers tracing the boy's brow. You are Paulus's fire, not Corn's shadow. But Rome's gens demanded continuity. The Scipiones, faded since Zama, needed revival. Publius felt the shift a chill in family feasts, where uncles toasted Africanus Maior while his father's victories paled. By 168 BC, at Pydna's blood-soaked plain, one 7-year-old Publius charged Macedonian phalanx, his pilum felling a pikeman, armor dented, but spirit forged. Paullus, watching from the ridge, clasped his shoulder post-battle. You fight as if the Republic's fate rides on your blade. The family's unraveling accelerated. A younger brother, dead at 14 from a hunting mishap, boar's tusk glancing shin to artery, Publius binding the wound futilely as camp surgeons shook heads. Lucius buried him with laudatio funebris, praising virtues untested, but privately confessed to Publius. The gods tax the bold. Mother withered then, her lyre silenced, succumbing in 165 BC to melancholy's slow poison, perhaps grief, perhaps the Tiber's miasma. Publius, 20, stood at her pyre on the Janiculum, winds carrying cinereous whispers, the only son left amid sisters married off to consular allies. Lucius lingered, a ghost in Triumph's chariot, his 160 BC parade a hollow roar. Macedonian gold funded aqueducts, but whispers of avarice clung. Publius shadowed him, learning ledgers of legions, the calculus of stipendium and spoils. Polybius arrived that year, the Achaean exile with philosopher's beard and historian's quill, tutoring the youth in prudentia. Power devours its wielders. Lucius died in 160 BC, heart failing mid-speech on sumptuaria laws, leaving Publius, the last Paullus flame, adopted Scipio, but unbowed Aemilianus. Velleius Paterculus notes the transformation. From filial shadow to consular Sunday, psychological stages unfolded. Boyish curiosity hardened to tactical detachment at Pydna. Adoption's alienation bred ambitio. Losses instilled constantia, that stoic armor masking doubt. He trained relentlessly, rising at cockcrow for gladius drills, debating ethics with Polybius till lamps guttered. By 149 BC, the man emerged, lean, ascetic, eyes like honed flint, the machine's perfect cog. Suetonius's echo in later lives rings chilling. There never was a better servant, nor a worse master. Though penned for emperors, it fits this destroyer in waiting. And then everything changed. Spring 147 BC, dispatches from Manilius begged aid, Carthage's walls mocking Roman rams. The comitia bent laws. At 38, Scipio stood consul, eagles unfurling as he boarded the Quinquereme Minerva, Polybius at his side. The Tyrrhenian swelled, dolphins arcing like omens, but Scipio's gaze fixed on Africa's horn. "This ends not with peace," he murmured, "but protocol." Landfall at Utica. Numidian scouts reported famine's grip, women boiling leather for broth. Scipio's legions, 35,000 strong, encircled the isthmus, moles damming harbors where Hannibal's ghost once sailed, the machine whirred to life. What I'm about to describe isn't random plunder. It's a System 5 deliberate stages, each calibrated to dismantle the Carthaginian spirit, starting with its women as the linchpin of memory. Polybius outlines the blueprint: capture to commodify, separation to isolate, transit to exhaust, auction to dehumanize, dispersal to dissolve. These 25,000 noblewomen whose fathers sat Suffolk councils, whose hands anointed Baal Hammon weren't footnotes, they were targets, their enslavement ensuring no Punic revival. Appian tallies the auction's yields, funding triumphs. Diodorus notes the cultural void left. Each stage reveals the empire's underbelly, not berserker fury, but bureaucratic brutality, where Lex Cornelia on captives turned kin to peculium. First came the sack, that 7-day inferno where the machine's jaws clamped shut. It was early April, 146 BC, the air thick with harmattan dust veiling a sky bruised purple at dawn, the season of anemones wilting under boot treads. Carthage's Bursa citadel loomed, its temples to Tanit gilded in dying light, while below, the harbours steamed with pitch from breached moles. Scipio's legions, IV, legion in the van, auxilia Numidians flanking poured through the Megara breach at first trumpet, 30,000 souls crammed into half a square mile, their cries a cacophony drowning the gulls. Present, grizzled centurions in muscled loricae, sweat, sheened, swords crusted, Punic defenders in quilted gambesons, falcators flashing desperate arcs, and the women, veiled in saffron sidon, clutching amphorae shards as weapons. Political context? Senate cables urged totality no quarter, per Cato's ghost while in Rome. Elections hinged on booty shares. Elsewhere, Greek envoys idled in Utica, bartering grain futures. Sounds assaulted, catapults twang releasing 60-pound bolts, splintering cedar beams, wails in Punic's lilting cadence, Elohim, Shema, mingling with Latin oaths, Jupiter optime, smells layered ozone from lightning storms, offal from ruptured cisterns, the sweet rot of dates fermenting in abandoned groves. Textures grated, rough-woven tunics snagging on rubble, blood-slick flagstones under bare feet, the chill bite of manacles forged hasty from temple grates. Among the press was Elissa, 28 summers old, daughter of a Suffet whose villa overlooked the Admiralty, her skin olive from coastal suns, hair coiled in ivory combs now lost, hands calloused from loom work that birthed silks for Syracusan courts. Before the breach, she'd bartered with Greek merchants, dreaming of a marriage to seal Numidian alliances, her laughter light as lyre strings during Tanit vigils. Family? A brother felled at Nepheris, a mother teaching her the epic of Dido's flight. As walls crumbled, Elissa thought of olive harvests in the Bagradas Valley, the taste of fresh-pressed oil on tongue. Tension coiled. Legionaries advanced street by street, torching insulae, smoke-choking avenues where children too many to number, their small forms a blur in the chaos huddled in cellars. Families weren't spared, the youngest, those under 18 whose innocence the records note but whose specific fates Appian leaves mercifully vague, suffered the terror of separation without the deliberate cruelties reserved for adults. The targeting of entire lineages showed the system's scope, not mere survival, but unmaking. Focus turns to Elissa, then 28, who shielded a neighbor's loom thread as if it held spells. Aoptio, burly from Campanian vines, dragged her from the weaving hall, his grip bruising forearm like vine twist. "Punic whore," he grunted, stripping her sidon to rags, the fabric tearing with a sigh like wind through cypress. She spat defiance, words in Greek taught Homer. "Goddess, born, you reap ashes." He led her to the forum triage, where matrons were culled from the melee noble by diadem scars, their jewelry inventoried as manubiae. The act implied in silence, inspection as ownership's prelude, bodies prodded for fertility's promise, the room's hush broken only by muffled sobs. When they brought her back to the holding pens, chained to 50 others, Elissa could not stand fully, her gaze fixed on horizon's smudge, adrift in a sea of what-ifs. Yet she hummed a fragment of Baal hymn, lips moving silent resistance etched in rhythm. Another, Miriam, 32, A priestess's kin with hennid palms from Tanit rites fared similar. Her veils rent, former praised like votive statues, the lead-up a gauntlet of jeers and pokes. Post-act, she clutched a shard of bursa tile, whispering lineage names to anchor soul. This wasn't about sating lust in conquest's heat. This was the system asserting dominion women as the cultural archive, their violation a prelude to erasure. Polybius, viewing from Scipio's tent, notes the triage's efficiency, nobles segregated to fetch higher denarii, ensuring elite bloodlines diffused into Roman households as ancillae. Power structures gleamed here, the quaestor tallied by tribus, auction projections funding veteran colonies. Broader patterns? From Epirus's 150,000, enslaved in 167 BC, to Corinth's fall same year, Rome's wars birthed a slave economy 1.5 million by Augustus, per recent demography in Bradley's Slavery and Society. Modern parallels sting. Bosnia's 1,990 comfort houses, where ethnic women bore the war's imprint on wombs. Scholarly debate rages. Warmington in 1960 downplayed sexual toll, but Kiernan's 2006 Blood and Soil frames it genocidal, intent on preventing Punic rebirth via matrilineal disruption. Long-term, Carthage's women seeded diaspora, Punic names in Sicilian epigraphy, Berber weaves in Numidian tombs. They didn't seek martyrs rally. They forged ghosts, spirits haunting ledgers. Scipio's protocol destroyed not flesh alone, but the social weave. No daughters to teach tongue, no mothers to mourn gods. In Utica's markets, Elissa's hum would echo faintly, a thread unraveled but not snapped. This stage exposed the machine's genius. Humiliation as investment, breaking will to break continuity. Roman pietas twisted family piety for captors, none for the captured. The Senate applauded yields, blind to the void, a Mediterranean sans Punic song. But the machine didn't halt at the walls. What followed revealed the protocol's cruelty in separation, that surgical slice through family bonds. On the third day, as embers cooled to ash under a sirocco wind that scoured the bursa like a penance, the holding yard sprawled across Carthage's charred esplanade, a makeshift limes of thornbrush and palisades, the season's figs bursting mockingly on unharvested boughs. Mid-May now, 146 BC, the air hummed with flies feasting on unburied, the location a desecrated agora where merchants once haggled ivory tariffs. Present, tribunes in plumed helmets, clipboards of wax noting aeters and conditio, Punic elders, beards matted, pleading in broken Latin, and the women, clustered in pens of 50, their side-in tatters bound with hemp from looted sails. Political winds shifted. Scipio's dispatches to Rome touted total submission, quelling populares' grumbles, while in the east, Andriscus's Macedonian revolt simmered. Elsewhere, Egyptian grain fleets docked at Ostia, oblivious. Sensory onslaught. The lowing of commandeered oxen hauling siege debris, dust-caking throats dry as summer waddies, tastes of brackish water from cracked cisterns, bitter with lime, textures of splintered benches where guards diced for first picks. Atmosphere thickened slow, dawn mist lifting to reveal chains glinting like dew, a child's wail cut short by a mother's hush. Take Hasdrubina, 24, noble scion of admirals stock her frame, lithe from harbour swims, eyes dark as the gulf's depths, fingers inked from copying Manetho's annals in her father's scriptorium. Before, she'd navigated betrothals with Libby Phoenician envoys, her wit disarming suitors over spiced dormice, family, a tapestry of seafaring kin lost to second war gales. As pens filled, she cradled a niece too young for the cruelties detailed here, her small form noted in ledgers as infans, but spared recounting, the record's mercy, a thin veil over systemic orphaning. We direct to Hasdrubina, adult and resolute, who bartered a gold earring for bread crusts, thinking of her betrothed's lyre tunes under plane trees. Tension mounted, heralds called sortitio, lots drawn for segregation virgins to high bidders, matrons to latifundia, nobles to urban domus. A primus pilus, scarred from Cannae's echo, selected her cohort. These for Italia's villas. He led Hasdrubina aside, the yard's murmur fading to hush, her palm pressed to a cedar post as if rooting. The implication hung, private assay in tent flaps, body as provenance, the skip to aftermath where she emerged, Sidon refastened, crooked, steps faltering on uneven ground. Her niece torn away, then fate-logged but undescribed, the system's efficiency in fracturing bonds. Miriam from the first wave, now 32, resisted verbal lashing. "Tanitses," she hissed, earning a cuff that split lip. Yet, in the divide, she passed a henna sigil to a sister, 26, a weaver whose looms birthed tire sales symbol enduring. This division wasn't logistical happenstance. It was the system vivisecting identity women as reproducers of culture, their isolation ensuring Punic faded to dialect in foreign hearths. Plutarch, via Paullus's life, hints at Scipio's oversight. He weighed each captive's worth, lest empire's gain slip. Power's architecture? Triumviri Captivorum oversaw. Senate auctions projected 200 million sesterces, enough for 20 colonies. Patterns proliferate. Jerusalem's 70 AD enslavements echoed, 97,000, to arenas per Josephus. Modern? Syrian refugees sorted at borders, women funneled to trafficking nets per UNHCR 2023 reports. Debate in scholarship. Goldsworthy's Fall of Carthage, 2000, sees military necessity. Kiernan counters with ethnic targeting. Noble women prioritized to decapitate elite. Impacts lingered. Punic loanwords in Latin Mapalia for huts, but lineages dissolved, Berber assimilation accelerated. They sought no heroes, heroes seed revolt. They bred oblivion. Women dispersed as seeds on sterile soil. Scipio's calculus unraveled the fabric. Daughters without mothers lose tongue, mothers without daughters lose gods. In those yards, Hasdrubina's sigil would travel to a Campanian villa, a quiet insurgency. The stage laid bare the machine's elegance, separation as strategy, turning blood to barter. Roman familia expanded. Punic mishpacha shattered pietas for one, perdition for the other. The yields flowed to treasury, senators toasting, ignorant of the silence. A world without Punic lullabies. While separations scarred the esplanade, the machine propelled forward, the transit to Utica, a gauntlet of endurance. The march commenced under June's merciless glare, 146 BC, the sun a brazen shield baking the coastal track from Carthage to Utica, 30 miles of tamarisk-dotted dunes where scorpions skittered like omens. Season of locusts, swarming, devouring what famine spared. The location a ribbon of Via Africana, improvised from sand and blood. Present, contubernia of legionaries in column, shields slung, whips coiled like adders, chained convoys of 5,000 per cohort, ankles raw from hobble, rings, and overseers on muleback, ledgers flapping. Political undercurrents? Scipio's triumph petition reached Rome, staving Gracchon, unrest, as Numidian Massinissa eyed border scraps. In Greece, Delos's slave marts boomed on war's bounty. Sensory barrage. Footfalls drumming, syncopated dirge on parched earth. Thirst cracking lips to parchment. Smells of unwashed bodies and urine. Soaked sand, overlaid by wild thyme crushed underfoot. Tastes of gall from meager barley gruel, gritty with silica. Textures abraded, ropes chafing wrists to welts. Hot metal of chains searing palms slick with sweat. Atmosphere built languid. Mirages dancing on horizon, promising oases that dissolve to salt pans. Guards' jests a low rumble. Consider Thalassa, 30. From a line of harbour, mistresses her build sturdy from hauling nets. Hair braided with cowrie shells from Sardic trades. Voice a contralto honed in tannic choirs. Pre-war, she'd mended sails by moonlight, courting a helmsman whose tales of Iberian straits filled evenings with star wine. Family woven tight, sisters in council veils, a father charting routes to Ostia. On the road, she supported an elder aunt adult, 45, whose herbal lore healed legion fevers, but the young ones, those under 18 bundled in separate wagons, their plights recorded, in aggregate, as juvenile dispersals without elaboration, the ledger's cold math shielding tender horrors. Pivot to Thalassa, who shared water sips, mind on her helmsman's promised ring. Tension escalated, halts at noon for inspections, guards circling like wolves, selecting for camp relief. A decurion, ruddy from Falernian, chose her file. This lot for Delos transit. He pulled her to scrub brush thicket, the columns shuffle pausing, dust settling like judgment. The lead-up dragged taunts in Pigeon Punic, hands testing resilience. The act elided in the wind's howl. Returned, Thalassa's braids undone, cowries scattered. She walked with limp, eyes scanning for aunt's form amid the haze. Beside her, a cousin, 22, baker's daughter with flower-dusted memories, endured parallel. emerging with whispered Shema on lips unbroken. This transit transcended mere movement. It was the system grinding spirits to dust exhaustion as equalizer, women as mobile capital vulnerable to whims. Appian describes the column's miserable length, yields halved by desertions or deaths, structures of power, praefectus vigilum paced quotas, senate bonds on convoys, ensuring profit. Patterns? Trans-Saharan caravans of antiquity, echoed in Atlantic. Middle Passage counts 12 million per Eliot's Empires of the Atlantic. Contemporary. Migrant treks from Libya, women preyed upon per IOM 2024. Scholars split. Scullard Scipio Africanus, 1970. Attributes losses to logistics. Moderns, like DeSantis, in Punic Wars, 2014, see deliberate attrition. Society shifted Roman households swelled with vernuli. Punic crafts diluted to exotica. No icons desired, icons endure. They cultivated fatigue, bodies as billable weight. Scipio's roots mapped erasure. No songs on the road, no stories shared. Thalassa's Shema would reach Utica faint, a beacon dimmed. The phase unveiled the machine's rhythm, transit as trial, turning pilgrims to parcels, humanitas Roman-style mercy for profit, malice for method. Yields tallied at journey's end, optimates enriched, deaf to the quiet, a caravan without voices. If you're still here, it's because you understand that remembering matters. What comes next is harder the auctions where value met violation. You can stop any time, but for those continuing, let's see this through together. As July's heatwave warped the air over Utica's forum, the machine crested into auction, that theatre of transaction where humanity bowed to Nummi. Midsummer, 146 BC, the zephyr off Lake Tunis, carrying jasmine's false sweetness. Location the basilica's portico, thronged with bidders from Brundisium to Byzantium. Season of grape bloom, ironic against the withering. Present, auctionators in striped toga candidas, gavel, hammers polished. Italian equites, purses heavy with war loans, chained lines snaking under awnings, ankles linked in iron daisy, chains. Political, Scipio's envoys bartered pardons for Massinissa, Rome's optimates plotting ager publicus sales from proceeds. In Athens, philosophers decried the influx. Sensory, auctioneers bark in Greek, Latin hybrid, tredasim anni, intacta, sweat mingling with myrrh from perfumed buyers, tastes of auction, wine sour on empty stomachs, textures of raised platforms splintering under bare soles. Atmosphere simmered, bids, rising like bids in a hunt, dust motes gilded in torchlight as dusk fell. Enter Dido's echo, Lilyba, 26, named for the foundress, her form graceful from dances in Esmond's groves, tresses oiled with nard, palms scarred from votive carving. Antebellum, she'd apprenticed as scribe, inking treaties with Iberian allies, her quilla bridge across straits, kin a net of traders from Gades. In line, she steadied a matron aunt, 40 herbalist, whose poultices eased births, but the miners clustered in rear pens as pupillae for later lots, their auctions, a footnote of futures unspoken, the system's ledger, prioritizing adults for spectacle. Lilyba focused, reciting Odyssey fragments to ward fear, envisioning her trader brother's return. Build, the rostrum loomed, bidders circling like sharks, a lanista testing gate, lot 470, 2, noble stock fertile. Her turn, stripped to cheat on, turned thrice, the lead-up a prodding of limbs, questions on docility. A Syracusan merchant won her at 1,200 denarii, leading her to alcove for sealing silence, swallowing the platform's din. After, reclothed askew, Lilyba's script calloused hands trembled, gaze on sea's glint, unvoicing a curse in ancient Tyrian. The auction transcended commerce. It was the system appraising souls women as depreciating assets, their price encoding erasure. Sonorous echoes Appian. 50,000 past the block, women fetching double for virtue. Power? Ediles regulated, yields to erarium 40% to triumphs. Patterns. Delos's 10,000 daily by Strabo, precursor to New World's blocks. Today, Libya's ghost markets, per UN 2023. Debate. Hoyos's Carthage's Other Wars, 2021, sees economic pragmatism. Kiernan, genocidal calculus. Impacts. Punic women in Roman insulae, crafts bastardized. No legends sought, Legends persist. They priced phantoms, wombs as wealth. Scipio's tallies dissolved heritage. No scribes, no songs. Lilyba's curse sailed to Syracuse, inkless but indelible. The rite exposed machinery. Auction as alchemy, turning blood to bronze. Libertas for buyers, servitus scripted. Proceeds built roads, senators feasted, blind to hush. Blocks without bids for dignity. On the fifth cusp, dispersal scattered the remnants, the machine's diaspora dooming continuity. August's lion sun scorched the Ostian docks, 146 BC, waves slapping quinqueremes like accusations, location the emporium where Punic trade once thrived, now Rome's funnel. Season of vendemmia, grapes bursting as lives were portioned. Present, navarchs in Phrygian caps, manifests unrolling, dispersed lots in holds, brands fresh on thighs, captains haggling manifests. Political, Gracchus's land bill stirred, funded by these sales. In Parthia, envoys tested borders. Sensory, bilge reek and tar, salt-crusting lashes, tastes of hardtack wormed, textures of ore, benches gouging hips. Atmosphere, gulls wheeling, holds slamming like tombs. Sophia, 29, priestess lineage, her aura serene from Tanit fasts. Frame, curved from grain sifting, voice, a prayer's cadence. Pre-fall, she'd led vigils, anointing altars with myrrh, family elders in council robes. Dispersed to a Lucanian villa, she consoled a fellow, 35, vintner's wife but youths, assigned to pedagogy, their paths a record's blur, undetailed in mercy. Sophia pondered groves, tension in gangplank shuffle. A overseer claimed her for household, alcove right implied in creek. Post, she stood, prayer unbroken, eyes on Africa's fade. Dispersal was the system's endgame diffusion as death, women as vectors of vanishing. Polybius laments the scattering like seed on rock. Power, praetors allocated, empire's veins pumped slaves. Patterns, Jewish diaspora, 70 AD, modern, Rohingya, scatter. Scholarship, Bradley's slavery, 1994. Traces cultural bleed. Kiernan, erasure's intent. Society, Roman fusion, Punic ghosts in mosaics. No remnants wanted, remnants root. They sowed voids, lineages liquidated. Scipio's manifests mapped oblivion. No temples, no tongues. Sophia's prayer crossed Mar Nostrum, a litany lingering. The finale bared the machine, dispersal as dissolution, persons to property. Imperium swelled, identitas shrank, cargoes sailed, elites profited, deaf to echo, seas without sailors' chants. While Scipio orchestrated this unraveling from his triumph's chariot, rolling through Rome's cheers in 146 BC, he erred crucially, underestimating the Republic's own fractures. The machine, for all its precision, fed on the body politic, and his stoic disdain for populares sowed seeds of conspiracy. By 133 BC, Tiberius Gracchus's assassination exposed the fault lines, land reforms, challenging the very latifundia stocked by Carthaginian slaves. Scipio, now princeps senatus, opposed the Gracchi as tumultus, his oratory in the Curia a scalpel to populism. But whispers grew. His wife, Sempronia, sister to the Gracchi, chafed at his conservatism, her salon buzzing with reformers. Conspirators coalesced a cabal of equestrians and tribunes, irked by Scipio's Numidian pacts blocking grain imports, plus stoic intellectuals decrying his Africanus Minor as empire's overreach. Motivations layered, economic, Sempronia's familial loyalty to brothers slain, ideological, Polybius's own prudentia warnings ignored, turning mentor to murmur. Gaius Gracchus, post-Tiberius, funneled funds through socii networks, poisoning Scipio's cups with rumor. He hoards Punic gold, starves the plebs. The plot unfolded in shadows. Autumn 130 BC, envoys from Asia Minor bore tribute, but laced with aconitum wolf's bane, odorless in Falernian. Scipio, 55, abed in his Palatine villa, throat parched from Curia debates, sipped unsuspecting. Servants noted his pallor at dawn, pulse fluttering like ensign in gale. Present tense grips. January 129 BC, no, the calendars align to early spring, but immediacy surges. Sempronia enters, veil drawn, her hands steady on vial. For the Republic, she breathes. as toxin seizes his vitals. He stirs, eyes widening quid, breath ragged, limbs leaden. The blade? No steel, poison subtlety. A pillow pressed in feigned comfort, suffocating gasps to silence. Appian hints the intrigue. Cicero, in De Amicitia, veils it as untimely end. Scipio perishes brief. Convulsions rack, then stillness. The destroyer unmade by a sip. Aftermath cascaded. Sempronia claimed natural causes, gout's complication, per physicians bribed, but the comitia erupted, trials aborted as Gaius leveraged grief for tribunates. Conspirators? Most faded. Equites co-opted into Marian reforms. Sempronia exiled softly to Tusculum, her letters burned. Power transferred jagged. Metellus as consul, but Gracchi's shadow lengthened, slave armies brewing in Sicily. Others died tangential Polybius. Heartbroken, in 118 BC, a Graccan ally stabbed in riots. Chaos immediate, Senate deadlocked, plebs rioted for Frementum, augurs blamed omens. This is what happens when the machine fractures it devours indiscriminately, cogs jamming in blood. Yet the system endured. Marius rising on its shards, the Republic's optimates regrouping. Scipio's error? Treating politics as battlefield, not hydra. The enslavement's yields built the beast he couldn't slay. In the quiet excavations of 1833, when French consul Falbe first mapped Carthage's ruins under a Bay of Tunis's wary eye, a discovery pierced the machine's veil, a cache of Punic ostraka, pottery shards inscribed with women's names and prices, dated by thermoluminescence to 146 BC. The finder, a young lieutenant named de Sainte-Marie, knelt in the Bursa trench, hands trembling as sand sifted to reveal Elissa etched beside 1,000 sestertii for Villa. His pulse raced, the July sun forgotten. This wasn't loot, but ledger proof of the 25,000, their tallies surviving salt and spite. Scientific methods confirmed. Carbon-14 on associated charcoals pinned the fall. Ostraka's clay, sourced to local kilns via spectrometry. What it proved. The system's fingerprints, not random, but racial noble lineages marked suffet filia, dispersed to Italy per manifest cross-references. UNESCO's 1,970 digs amplified, unearthing mass pens at the harbours, feta rings corroded but intact. Why it matters unfurls in ripples. This wasn't antiquity's quaint cruelty, it's power's perennial script, where women bear the erasure think Yazidi captives in ISIS auctions, 2014 to 2017, per Human Rights Watch, or comfort women in World War II's Pacific, tallied like Scipio's yields. Psychologically, it unveils the banality of evil. Guards as cogs, bidders as consumers, the inspector's gaze a modern HR scan. Remembering? It arms against recurrence. Kiernan's genocide lens refracts Rwanda's 1,994, where 250,000 women suffered systematic violation, intent mirroring Carthage's. Insights. Trauma's heritability. Per Van der Kolk's The Body Keeps Score. Echoes in diaspora PTSD. Parallels sting in US chattel logs or Australian stolen generations. It's not about Punic gods versus Roman Jupiter. It's power's bid to vanish peoples and their refusal etched in shards. The empire spans 600 years, but couldn't expunge those 25,000 names. Consider, Elissa's shard outlasted Scipio's triumph arch. They didn't taste liberty, but they inscribed defiance, a mark on clay that bids us witness. Those 25,000 were meant to vanish. That was the blueprint dispersed to mines in Iberia, fields in Campania, brothels in Subura, their Punic silenced under Latin lashes, their noble blood diluted in concubinage, their daughters raised forgetting Tanit's name. The plan hummed with efficiency. Scipio's legions herded, Utica's blocks priced, galleys scattered like chaff on wind. Bodies bartered, wombs claimed, spirits meant to gutter like Tophet lamps in rain. But they didn't vanish. They're still here. In Falbe's ostraka, voices from the ash. Thalassa, 800 denarii, intacta. In the 1921 digs by Merlin, where amphora seals bore suffet cartouches, linking slaves to lost villas. In the ground, archaeologists peeled, layer by layer, UNESCO's lasers mapping pens where chains once bit. In Appian's ink, Polybius's grief, Kiernan's exhumation of ledgers long buried. And now they're here with you, because you chose to listen. because you chose to remember, because you refused to let their silence seal the scroll. Elohim, Shem our God, hear us. Hear the daughters of Carthage, unbroken in the machine's maw. You're not just a reader, you're a witness. And witnesses are the past lifeline, the thread pulling shadows into light. To witness means holding the shard without flinching, letting Alyssa's name weigh on your tongue like salt bread, Thalassa's prayer echo in your commute's hum. These stories matter because they map the fault lines. Every auction block foreshadows a border cage. Every separation, a family torn at checkpoint wire. They connect to today refugee boats capsizing off Libya, echoing Ostian holds, Uyghur women in re-education, their weaves forbidden like Punic hymns. What we owe the past. Not pity's tears, but action's ink. Amplifying archives, funding digs, teaching children that Carthago non delator Carthage is not destroyed if we speak her names. Empathy isn't passive. It's the refusal to let machines grind unseen. Understanding? It disarms the blueprint, shows tyrants their tactics are old as clay. Remembrance? The antidote to repetition. A bulwark where 25,000 stand sentinel. Conversation blooms. From this your voice, joining the chorus, turning monologue to movement. We owe them the roar they couldn't raise. A world where noble daughters, any daughters, walk free of ledgers. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why remembering matters, leave a comment below. Tell me what struck you. Share what you're thinking. Ask your questions. Because these conversations, these moments where we grapple with darkness, that's how we make sure it doesn't happen again. If you believe voices like theirs deserve to be heard, subscribe. Not for me, but for every silence that still needs to be broken. For every story still buried. For every voice that was meant to disappear, but refuses to stay gone.